Hey everyone, welcome to the Kubernetes 1.26 release team retrospective part 1. We are doing this as a mid-cycle retro to understand what went well so far, what can we do better in the next few weeks of the release cycle or the remaining part of the release cycle. Before we get into business, do remember this is a Kubernetes community meeting and it is governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. So please be nice to everyone. And this meeting is also being recorded. So please be aware of what you say and do in this meeting because the recording will be publicly available on YouTube. Cool. Before we start with the current release cycle, there are a few housekeeping items. Okay, just for information, the meeting notes are in the chat. So I would request you all to open that. And the first agenda item is like the previous retro follow-up. So I've put exactly the same table from last time, and we can go over those. What we can do is we can see like who is on this call, and then see what is done already. So some line items are already marked green, so we may not need to go over them. But I'll just go over the items where I see like people are on this call. The first one, automating weekly CA signal report. Leo, do you have any updates?
Yeah, so not really. So this is still work in progress. We have this. This is like a manual task right now. So there's this tool which we can use to generate the report, but this gets not published automatically to Slack. So it's like semi-automized, I would say.
Got it. So I think are there like items still to be done there? Are we targeting like automation completely, or we can say this to be done and then follow up in a different issue?
Yeah, so we created a couple of issues. I have to check if they are still open or if the bot closed some of the issues already. Okay, it's still open. I think for now it's fine that we generate it with the CLI and then just copy paste it over. I think that's fine. It's not needed to automate everything at this point. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if Nivyata has any comments on this. Maybe not.
No, actually, I don't have any comment on this. So yeah.
Moving over to the next point, CA signal to pilot CP for 1.26. I believe we did not try this.
Yeah, so this is maybe also more for Nivyata. I'm not sure if have you used CP at all this cycle?
No, actually no. For monitoring, we are only using the test grid. We are not using CP. So.
Okay, but I think this is also a result that maybe it's not needed that we use CP at all, so we can just use the tools that we already have. That's also good.
Okay.
I think we can come back to this even later, and it's not kind of a really cycle-related follow-up. And this sounds more like a long-term issue where we change our processes. All. I don't see anyone else on this call. Does anyone want to speak on any of the topics? No comments? Okay, then probably we can move ahead. What went well in 1.26? Grace, do you want to speak about it?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. I think our GitHub project boards received a lot of good feedback from the community, as well as improving our the internal release team experience. And this is across enhancements and bug triage and docs and maybe release notes as well. Yeah.
Do the people who have +1 want to speak something on it? Mark, Priyanka, Federico, if you're on the call.
I don't have too much else to say. Yeah, a lot of people seem to appreciate it and make it easier to kind of have more information in one view. Except for it not being automated, there really wasn't that many issues with this from the enhancements team.
I agree. I think we've gone a lot far in this, and this is like really great work which has happened. Ray.
Oh, I think I think everything went well with it so far. I did receive some private feedback that later on this and how do we clean up, or if we need to clean up any enhancements that are no longer on opted in, or like if they didn't have all their code in time for code freeze, or they opted out, how do we remove those or note those, or it's if we do need to clean up a process, it was just privately noted to me. And we might already have something already. Sorry for interrupting. We might already have. They may no longer have certain labels, which is true. Like track equals no, and maybe then we just go with that and on how we no longer track them. But just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I think that this has been a spectacular change as well. I think that it's been really well received and has been. Yeah, I can't thank you folks enough for doing this one. One small iteration suggestion that's come up is potentially tracking non-cap docs updates. But I think that's a conversation. I'm not exactly sure where that conversation should happen, but it's it's been great so far.
Awesome. Do you have any other comments, concerns on this? Cool.
So regarding this, what Nate just said about docs, if I remember correctly, we had a thread in Slack somewhere discussing this, but I might be wrong. Or haven't
I know there's
continued?
I'm sorry, Leo.
No, I was finished.
I was going to just say that there's a second project board that's currently being used to track the non-cap related doc updates to the dev 1.26 branch. So that's what's currently being used.
Yeah, that's correct. And this has also been brought up in last week during KubeCon sort of release discussions and whatnot. So there are folks talking about it around the ecosystem, but it's probably, it may even be worth opening up an issue somewhere as like an official discussion about how we might make incremental changes to the board moving forward, or the board process rather.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
On the basis of the discussions that we had, I think the TLDR was we were okay with adding non-cap docs issues on the docs view of the board, provided like we could filter views on the basis of repos, so that the non-cap issues don't show up in the enhancements view of the project board, and that should solve the problem.
That's right. That's right. I remember. No, I thought we had agreed not to make a decision there though, but I couldn't remember who. I think it was Benjamin Elder mentioned that there was a spot that discussion should go to in order for that decision to be made, rather than us making it in the room at the time. Unfortunately, I don't recall where that should have been.
I think this is on me. I think there's a few discussion items that we've talked about at KubeCon that needs to be threads in SIG release. So I'll make those, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you all for taking this ahead. We don't have any other points in what went well, but feel free to like keep on adding things here. I'm pretty sure like there are other things also which went well in this release. For now, we will go ahead and we can talk about like what could have gone better in 1.26. Leo, you want to talk about it?
Yes. So the first one is about the Shadow application form. Right now, so we have this tool, Release Team Shadow Stats project tool, which we use to generate basically just a rundown of the applicants. So all the team leads can basically just go through a markdown file, and it's a lot easier to select shadows. And right now our form is not, there's no like standard. I think we can simplify the entire form a little bit. So for example, we have now like 2 fields for time zones. We can in general just improve and the application form and make it simpler, so it's also easier for the tool to process the data. So without any, so this does not like hurt the form or anything. It's just, yeah. So that's something for 1.27, I would say.
Yep, I agree. Like and there are ambiguities in time zones as well. The same time zone, as you mentioned, like could mean like different regions. We should probably just standardize to using like UTC offsets or something like that as options, which would make things simpler for people. Cool. Any questions, comments, concerns on this? Okay, I would take that as no. Let's go ahead to Ray's point on what will we do differently in 1.27. Ray, you still there?
Yep, still here. So this is a new, so part of the docs team's task for the release team is to generate reference docs. We generate reference docs for like kube control and the API server. This is in SIG instrumentation. Recently created a generator to generate the page that's listed here. For metrics, that the metrics data that that Kubernetes exports. So it's up and running, and so this is, I believe, this is part of the KEP that Leo mentioned. That's on that link there. This request is for the docs subteam or the docs team to add additional task to run this generator with in SIG instrumentation will work out the details on the steps needed to run this generator to generate the updates to that reference / instrumentation / metrics page. In the meantime, between the handoff, SIG instrumentation did agree that they will run the generator themselves until the handoff is complete or is agreed upon. And so right now there is a link in the pull request to there's a link within a PR to another PR with the steps on how to run the generator. But ideally, this will be fully documented before the docs team has to run the generator. But for until then, and SIG instrumentation will run the generator. So this is a request for the docs team to add this additional task in part of the reference doc generation that's currently in the part of the task that the docs team runs. Any comments or questions? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So right now the reference docs have been generated, but let's say by the end of the release cycle, there are more Prometheus metrics. Who is doing it for 1.26?
Right now it would be when the SIG instrumentation.
Mm-hmm. So are we going to poke them right before we cut the website branch? Is that the plan?
That is the plan, but it was updated already. So I'm not sure if it needs another update before the 1.26 release in terms of for the 1.26 release.
Got it.
Yeah. But we certainly can just to have a formal this confirmation if it needs to be run again.
But I like this plan of like integrating the Prometheus metrics docs generation along with the API reference generation. So that will just merge it into the same step. No new things needed.
Yep. And SIG docs do so historically for the past, I guess, few years now, the docs team actually has had issues with generating the reference docs for the API server and kube control. And one of the SIG docs tech leads have had to run the reference generation anyways, but we do plan to refactor that so that it will be easier to run. And that's so that SIG docs tech leads don't need to run it. And currently the past several release cycles since probably 1.19, it's been ran by SIG docs tech lead. But we do plan to make it easier so that and to have the steps more clear as well in the process, the user itself to run.
Do we have just a bit of a non sequitur, just some bookkeeping? Have we got an issue open for that refactoring yet?
I don't know if it's been open. I know might have been closed because
we've been talking about that for a while, and I think probably it's about time we opened an issue. So if you don't, I can, and okay. we'll take that offline.
Any more comments on this? Cool. I guess no. So we can move on to the next point. Federico, do you want to talk about it? Just seeing if Federico is on the call. Doesn't seem like that.
I'm in the call, yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know this.
Yeah, no worries. I joined late, 10 minutes late. I'm still driving. Yeah. Sorry, is my name there in some of the points? I can't read the screen.
Yeah, I can read it for you.
Yeah.
Since release docs, comms are using boards, it would make sense to analyze.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, that's just me thinking out loud, right? So because we started one of the plus ones that I remember from the start was the success in using GitHub boards for tracking. So several different teams are using it successfully. In terms of comms, we have a view on the Kubernetes 1.26 tracking sheets, which is automatically updated. So we have no issues there. So it works correctly. I know that Docs is also using the board. So I think that in this release, it's the first time that the boards are being widely used. Perhaps in the next one, with the lessons learned of this one, we could see if there's any space for making the usage of the board more uniform, right? So check what different teams are using in terms of boards, if they are using separate boards or a single board with multiple views. If it makes sense to, for example, in the onboarding of the teams, automatically change the YAML of the boards to reflect the ACLs that will need to be implemented, etc., etc.
I think you raise a good point on like using project boards. So if the comms team really wants to like move to project boards, I think you should just create a comms project board and go ahead with it, and remove the spreadsheet completely. And the next step can be like integrating with other boards. I mean, in this way, your decision of using project boards is not dependent on what other teams are doing.
We're there for this release. We're not using tracking sheets. We're using, sorry, this my toddler is singing. We are using 100% a project board for this release. It was a decision that we made early on. We decided not using a separate board. And one of the reasons was that it's actually quite useful to reutilize the work done in terms of the enhancements tracking, since we automatically get what's tracked, what's in risk, what was removed from milestone, and we don't have to duplicate nothing. So we get the real-time status of the enhancements that are on the release, and in our view, we just added additional fields like feature blogs, opt-in, shadow responsible, blog release date, other steps that we discussed. So it's working quite nice. So maybe this experience, along with the experience of others that have set up independent boards, not related, and as far as I know, not collecting that information, but maybe it's not as useful. I think it would make sense to see for the next release if we could, if there's something to gain in having a unified approach from the very start.
Yeah, I think for docs, comms, and enhancements makes definitely sense for the other teams. So CI Signal, for example, I don't think so. Maybe there's like an opportunity to integrate some things from CI Signal and bug triage, for example. But yeah, I think that's a good idea overall to push this.
Yes, we certainly could not like integrate all boards because CI Signal ties a little with bug triage, but not with enhancements work at all. On that point, I think like we should also count this as a win that comms has moved to project boards, and we should also note that in what went well for this release cycle. This is a note from me.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's certainly a plus, and something that's I'm updating in the communications handbook, obviously.
And thank you for that. Okay, any questions, comments, or concerns? Bhavani, you can speak. Bhavani, you can see. I see that you have raised your hand, so you can unmute yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, I was discussing this with Nivedita, the CI Signal lead. So currently, when we raise issues for any failing tests, I raise the issue, and then I have to go and manually add that issue to our project, to our issue tracking board. And again, So there are some opportunities to automate all of that, probably using GitHub Actions. Once an issue is created, it has certain tags. Can we look at automatically adding that to the any particular project dashboard? Most of the information again is duplicated on the dashboard as well. So for some possibility to remove those manual additional steps, that would make it easier. That's all.
I think one thing you can do is when you create the issue on the GitHub UI on the right hand side, there's an option to select a project board for this, or select multiple project boards. This way it will directly come to the project board.
Yeah, and then we have to
Hmm.
duplicate, and then we have to update all of the information as well in the project board. It's the same information that I already add in the issue. So yeah, just like reducing some of those manual steps from duplicating the information that we do.
Yeah, I think those fields we can probably remove from the boards. Or like, this seems to me like multiple sources of truth problem. We should consider like one specific thing to be the source of truth and not like duplicate. And probably we should identify like what value we are getting out of like adding every field in the project board itself, what we're writing in the issue.
Yeah, because on the project board, I believe you can just add a column that's all of the tags that are associated with the items. I think you can set up filters for the items that have specific tags too, if you want to filter views, but we might not need individual columns. But if there's not individual columns, I know it makes it harder to generate like the graphs if people are interested in the stats. So
yeah, I think the problem you mentioned is, so for say signal issues in the issue, you write which grade the test is in, which test it is failing, and that information is duplicated as like fields in the board views. I really don't have a good way to solve this problem other than like parsing through the issue contents and then like filling in the project board. But this also seems to be like a very tough problem. That's why I'm wondering, like, shall we even evaluate why are we storing like multiple pieces of information, and then see like what actually we need to copy over or keep on updating. But I'm happy if someone can like take up this action item of exploring how this automation can be done.
I would be happy to look into it.
Awesome. I think that would be really great.
Also, one note to this, if I remember correct, there was, I think, an issue which is already quite old, maybe a year old or something, regarding overall stats about the release. So how many, I don't know, how many caps have been dropped, how many caps have been opted in, and so on and so forth. So I think we already had this discussion, but the project board would also be a very good place to just gather all this information and generate charts, for example, and then we can use these to publish like some interesting report to the community. I can check after the meeting if I find the issue. I think Sasha mentioned this a few weeks ago again. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any more questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. If not, do we want to discuss anything from the parking lot, or should we defer it to the end of the release cycle? Can we get a head start on any of these points?
We could probably discuss the first issue about enhancements. I don't think that's going to change much between now and the release cycle.
Yeah.
Or end of the release.
And yeah, and also the knowledge transfer topic as well. I guess it will be good to discuss. Yeah.
Okay, then let's do both. So first one, I think it's a problem that has always been there. People don't follow up on caps, and my opinion is like I don't see any way other than like pinging them consistently. This is like a people problem and not a process problem that we are stumbling onto. But I'm happy to like listen to any comments or questions here. Yeah, Mark, please go.
One thing that I was just thinking of as I was reading through this too is I wonder if we should possibly make some amendments to the I know I think in the Kubernetes community repo, there's kind of some guidelines about like what responsibilities chair or SIG chairs have. I wonder if we should go and make some amendments to that to make it a little bit more clear that the chairs and TLs are responsible for shepherding enhancements from their SIG through this, and then outline a little bit about and just that, because I think that what I've seen on especially working on the enhancements team for a couple of releases is different SIG chair leads have have a very different amount of what's the right word? Just involvement with the enhancements process.
I think that's a great idea. We should update this information centrally wherever we are giving chairs and TLs the directive of what they're supposed to work on, or what does the role a SIG chair or a TL mean. On this point, can we create an issue in the community repo? Because I believe
I can do that.
Yeah, thanks. I think anything that we change in the definition of being a chair or a TL has to be signed off by steering, and that's why a community issue needs to be done here. I think after creating an issue, if someone can PR in what we want exactly, that would also serve a good guideline on for the steering and the chairs and TLs to even discuss in the chairs TLs monthly meeting, and then just discuss it and then come to a consensus, which is a difficult part. I was going to say something. Yeah, I do agree that I have seen some SIGs being proactive with bumping caps out of the cycle, which reduces, I think, the load on the enhancements team as well, because they're not left hanging as to determine whether a cap is going to be part of the cycle or not and redistribute the work appropriately. So yeah, I think I would be happy to see some progress on this. Does anyone have any other comments? Okay, I have a question. So we did mention that the cap authors may not have full knowledge of how the enhancements filing and the lifecycle looks like. Can we, in the enhancements release team, do something about it? Can we write possibly a blog post on Kubernetes contributor website, or write a developer guide doc in the community repo, which can eventually be mirrored to the contributor site? Can this help with developers' education?
I just found a doc that it looks like Laurie Apple wrote in the community repository under the chairs and tech leads folder that goes really into depth about how to opt your enhancements in, but it's all related to the spreadsheet. So we should definitely update that. I'll drop a link in the chat.
I think that's a good find.
Yeah.
We should be changing that.
Yeah. So I'll reference that in the issue that I create there too.
Thanks.
And maybe we can just update it there and then make an announcement on KDev or something.
Yeah, I think even like with the kind of life cycle that we are working with right now with the project board, many things would be redundant already with how we used to do the spreadsheet. So I guess like change would be welcome very easily. Cool. Are there any other comments or concerns to be brought up here, or any questions? Okay, I guess we don't have any. Nivedita, you wanted to talk about knowledge transfer in CI Signal?
Yeah. So like in every release, as we know, like except 1 or 2 people, every time new people join in the team. And for them, actually, it's very difficult to identify the flaky test because we also don't have the complete guide, like complete documentation for detecting flaky test. If we like go on the test grid, it will show most of the like tests are flaking, and it at the time of reporting, it's very difficult to identify which one is really flaking or not. So I think although we have a video on this, but I think few people prefer reading documentation over the video. So I think we should write detailed guide for the flake detection or anything else which will be easier for people to identify flaky tests. So because it already created a lot of confusion, so that's why I'm saying this.
So there's a follow-up question. Has anyone looked at the Flake Finder Fridays? I think there were 2 episodes long back.
No, I didn't know about this, like Flake Finder.
Yeah, so
it's I think it's not mentioned in the handbook as well. Okay.
Okay, I see a gap there. So some history here is, so what I remember is long back, this problem had occurred like, okay, how do we determine what's a flake and how do we learn? So Daniel Mangum and Rob Kilty back then worked to create a small series of like, you can say these are pairing sessions to go over problems and then like flakes and then seeing like what is going on. I will link both of the YouTube videos on the chat as well. So you can have a look and see if this serves as like some starting material to solve this problem. I still understand that this won't solve the problem of people preferring reading material rather than videos. And in that case, like we anyways need to write documentation.
So for CI Signal, there's a one pager, and at the bottom of the one pager there are some videos, and there's also flake finders. So maybe it's not good to have 2 documents. So the handbook and the one pager. Maybe we can delete the one pager again and have everything in the handbook. But the reason why we created this one page in the first place was that the handbook already is super long, like 20 pages. And the idea of this was just to have like the most like important information on one page. But yeah.
Or we could also have like a blaring heading on the CI Signal README that if you want to look at it quickly, go ahead and look at the one pager.
Also, there's some documentation by the infra team they have like a even more detailed guide to detect flakes and report flakes and everything around test grid, which I think is also not linked. let me see if I can find the link. Yeah, so maybe we can also reference the link I just sent. Yeah, but this goes into more detail, and yeah. So the problem is also that, for example, like deflagging and like using command line tools and everything. So there's not a requirement in the selection process, for example, that you have like deep knowledge about certain things that might be required to deflag tests. So there's like a I don't know, there's like a certain level of I don't know, complexity or something that we can maybe deliver from the CS Signal team. So yeah, we also need to see maybe how we can collaborate a little bit better with the infra team at this point.
Yeah, I guess I will read the documentation which you share, of which is of infra team, and I will try to find out the things which are not mentioned in our documentation, and I'll put that there. So maybe it will create more visibility. So yeah.
I think one thing we can do here is see if the current documentation suffices, and then identify the gaps and create an issue, and move along like with that. Whatever we find problematic, we'll just go ahead and like have all the active CI signal people like come and collaborate and improve the documentation.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah.
Bhavna, you have your hand.
Just throwing some thoughts here. Is my understanding wrong that as a new shadow, I expect these to be covered, like the flaky test, as a part of the onboarding process? Obviously, Nivedita was also a shadow within the team, and then she moved to a lead position. But even she didn't get that information. So at some point, I think when the onboarding was happening, these processes were dropped. But shouldn't I, as a new shadow, expect these things to be covered as the part of the CI Signal onboarding team to help me understand on how to identify, rather than trying to find out 10 different links that I need to go and then read? Like that, my understanding is that's the whole point of onboarding. Am I wrong in understanding that or expecting that?
So my point of view of the onboarding session is, so it's supposed to be like 30 minutes to 1 hour of like online session, and then like go ahead and give people the time to go ahead and explore the documentation at their own time, and then keep on like asking questions to the lead. I believe like
Sorry,
how
but like, why do we put that limit of 30 minutes to 1 hour? Like, is there any reason that it has to be completed with it? An onboarding is supposed to be, my understanding again, and I could be wrong, is to help new shadows get comfortable with their roles and responsibilities. Now that may for some complex teams take 2 hours. So why do we want to restrict it to 30 minutes and 1 hour?
yeah, so that's why I feel like 2 hours of continuous calls may not be feasible. What teams can do is, when there is like huge plethora, like huge dictionary of information to be understood, and uh, for a particular role, what you can do is you can start with like a particular time frame. You take like 1 hour, go over the basics, it's like, think of it like as an university lecture. I usually model it like that. So whenever I'm learning something in the Kubernetes community, I usually look at the breadth of the problem and then like dive deep into a single point. CI signal is a very big topic in the community because you have to understand like how does test infra work, how does the discrete work, how do we write tests, and this is, I agree that it is not possible in an hour. An hour can only give you a like skimmed layer of the information, and then what I believe is people can go and look at the docs, the videos that we have, and obviously there can be like hundreds of questions on them, and then they should ask the lead about those questions. And even I feel like we should not ask those questions privately. We should probably like push those questions in the CI signal public Slack channel. The reason I push for this is the question that you are asking right now may have already been answered, or this question may come up in the future by some other shadows. So this way, like you keep on creating like encyclopedia of information that people can refer to in the past. No, in the future.
I'm not sure I fully agree to the current process that we follow. And again, it could be my personal preference. So if I was leading CI Signal Shadow, my preference would be like to schedule 30 or 45 minutes of meetings, maybe every alternate day with those 4 or 5 shadow members and walk them through these things. Because when you leave it to people to read it, I'm not sure how many people would go and read it, right? But as a lead, when I conduct those sessions, I feel comfortable that, okay, I have transferred all the information that the team needs to know. And, it's like I have more confidence that everybody in the team has the information that they need to deliver on the job, to shadow for this particular role. But when you leave it to reading, and our documentation is it's a lot of information, and it's also not in one place. Like right now we saw those links which were being missed, and I did read a lot of documentation in the beginning. I updated a lot of documentation as well, but I'm realizing there's still documentation that I missed out on. So that's why I'm saying, if I was the lead, I would have preferred going through all of those important information, and obviously if you need more details or depth, providing them the required links, but rather than leaving it on shadow members to go and figure it out on your own. That would have been my approach, feeling comfortable that everybody in the team has the right knowledge and the skills to perform their roles, because currently I don't understand how test grid works. I don't know how to write the tests. So there's a lot of, again, finding that I have to go digging out, that I have to do, which with the day job, I may not always have the capacity to. But if somebody just walks me through, sometimes you need a bit of hand holding and then you can pick it up quickly. That's just my thoughts on this.
So like 2-3 points. One of them is like, I do agree that we should promote more pairing sessions. But how do we do this as a policy for the whole release team is kind of tricky. I believe like we can do this for sub teams. Maybe in the CI signal handbook, we can write that, hey, since this is a complicated role, please feel free to like conduct pairing sessions. But again, I would echo Grace's point, what Grace wrote in the chat, that it's really difficult to coordinate sync sessions and meetings, especially when like you are like hours apart in time zones, and things may not work out really well in that case. So I think we should find like a right balance of synchronous video onboarding sessions and doubt clearing sessions and asynchronous reading of docs. And this balance won't be uniform for all release team roles. It would be different for every release team role. For CI signal, the shadows may need a longer time to get onboarded, and hence may need like more synchronous sessions with the lead to ask doubts. If we in our handbooks have anywhere codified a policy of just 1 hour sessions, we should probably remove it. I don't think we should have a policy that we will only do 1 hour onboarding sessions. We should say like, this is the directive. Please feel free to like do it like do an onboarding session which could be of lesser duration or of more duration or spread over maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But then again, I am also a little concerned about people burning out if we say this as a directive that a lead has to do like half an hour sessions like every day for 2 weeks. Because a lot of us don't do Kubernetes like on full-time roles. Some of us here are like just volunteers doing it on their own time. So we have to be like aware of like all the situations.
I am one of those volunteers who is doing it on my own. And that's why I think for me, it would be much more helpful if I get that information rather than going and reading documents to be able to contribute and volunteer for the community. Like the way I look at it is that within those hours, because you have 4 or 5 people, right? You in terms of the time required, you will have these 4 or 5 people who will go and spend like hours reading this documentation. But as a team capacity, we could achieve that same knowledge transfer much more faster if we do that as a team, rather than trying and like going and doing it individually, finding things on our own. That's how I see it. But I understand that this may not be feasible for all the release teams. But I'm just saying it from the CI signal. This is my first shadow role as well within the release team. There could be other teams which obviously don't require the same depth of knowledge, but for me to feel more involved and engaged in my role, I think it's important in this CI signal team for me to have that knowledge.
So you raise a really great point here actually. So let's say if instead of reading the docs separately for 5 hours each, what if some of you who are closer in terms of time zones and may match schedules, like sit together and pair reading that doc? Because what happens is I've seen like if I have a doubt, if someone else has a doubt, sometimes like just speaking about the doubt helps. I'm just thinking aloud solutions here. I don't want to like create solutions here, but just like thinking of things that we can write in our shadow onboarding handbook about like suggesting people how to make the process of learning things faster. Leo, you have your hand raised, sorry.
Yes, so one idea was, for example, because maybe for CI signal, this is now more or less a special case. Maybe this also applies to enhancements, that there might be a good opportunity to define a new role, like an EA just for the team, because especially for CI signal, it takes quite some time to build up the knowledge and to basically just to get the hang of the entire system and everything. So to have like somebody, maybe, I don't know, from test infra or something, or just from the release team, it could be good, or could be, I don't know, a good role maybe.
I think we could float this as a discussion somewhere. So
I mean,
how I see is,
I was just saying, we really need to look into it. Maybe we don't need a solution now.
So this is a good item to actually discuss. The enhancements release team has a set of emeritus advisors in a way. The enhancement subproject leads are essentially people who have been on the release team in the past and can act as emeritus advisors. But for the CI signal team, I'm not sure like who would be that group. And I think I vaguely remember history that the CI signal team was actually, I think, a different subproject before, and then which was absorbed into like different parts of the community, one release team and the other being in test and but I may be wrong in saying that, just because I vaguely remember. Maybe we should have the discussion again.
Yeah.
Also, we are running out of time. We just have 2 minutes. Just quickly checking the vibe of the room if anyone has anything to speak about. think we can wrap up part 1 of the retro. Going through the notes, I'll also start like writing the action items. But if you already know what your action item is, like feel free to add it in the table at the bottom of the doc in this section. And then like if you want like create issues to work on them. Awesome. So thank you everyone for joining the Kubernetes 1.26 release team mid-cycle retro, and happy day or evening ahead.
Thank you. Bye bye. Cheers.
Bye bye.